Welcome back. We're with Pierre Rocher, a men's health physio, and we're talking today about your pelvic floor and pelvic floor exercises and how it helps specific dysfunctions that occur in the pelvis. So, Pierre, you can take it away. Tell us what is your pelvic floor and what pelvic floor exercises are.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks for having me back. So, everybody has a pelvic floor. Yes, even you, all males, you have a pelvic floor, but it's a muscle you cannot see and you cannot feel properly. So, it makes it really hard to know how to exercise it or to feel anything wrong with your pelvic floor. But your pelvic floor is a group of muscles that sit inside of your pelvis like a bowl, so like a fruit bowl. And they have different layers, and those layers have different responsibilities. These muscles have different functions, and so the one thing it does, it keeps your organs from falling out through your pelvis. It also has an important role to play around keeping you dry and incontinent, okay, and it also has an important role to play in your sexual dysfunction. So your pelvic floor is made up of skeletal muscle. So it's like any other muscle that you can go to the gym and you can go and exercise. And so the principles of training your pelvic floor is just the same, okay? You may have some activities that require endurance training. You may have some activities that require sprint training. And you can specifically train the pelvic floor to achieve those goals. When it comes to urinary incontinence, you may want some endurance training of your pelvic floor to maintain a bit of closure pressure around your urethra when you're running or when you're jumping or when you're talking. Or you may want some sprinting muscles to quickly close off the pressure if you maybe jump or you cough or something like that to prevent you from leaking urine. When it comes to sexual dysfunction, specifically with men, there are components related to endurance, so the marathon kind of like running kind of stuff, and that may be to attain a good quality erection. There may also be components related to quick fibers contracting, like having an orgasm or an ejaculation process like that. So I like to say to people, you always have to make sure that you cover your bases, okay? You want to ensure that you're training your muscles to compete with slow twitch events like marathon running. Okay, so nice and slow, nice pace. Have to do lots of them. So if you imagine that you are training for a marathon, you don't just wake up from never having had a run before and you go for a run. No, you train and you exercise and you prepare yourself over a long period of time to improve your endurance. But let's say you want to be the 100-meter sprint champion of the world, you probably need to do a lot of short bursts of exercises. So we want to specifically train the pelvic floor using those concepts. So I might get some patients to do some quick contractions. We may get some patients to do some slow contractions. And sometimes we may do a bit of cross training where we may do slow and fast and different holds and mix it up a little bit. The point is that it's quite specific to every person and to every person's personal situation and the symptoms that you are having. But the best is to be an all-rounder, to have a good ability to have fast contractions and a good ability to have slow contractions in the muscles, and to build a bit of capacity in your pelvic floor to handle different situations and to cover you when it comes to issues of sexual dysfunction, to cover you when it comes to issues of urinary incontinence. So as I said earlier, the main issue is you can't see your pelvic floor, you can't feel it. There are ways that physios, men's health physios can help you using technology. There's diagnostic ultrasound options where you can have a look at what's going on inside of your pelvis, and that's a diagnostic ultrasound probe, which is used just under your belly button. So it's nice and safe to use. It's relatively inexpensive to the patient, and there's very little embarrassment. And all you need is a full bladder, and you can have a look at what the pelvic floor does. So that's a nice way. There are other more invasive ways, which we don't typically recommend. And there are other ways of external palpation, whether you can do it yourself or not, to train yourself how to recognize the pelvic floor contraction. The biggest mistake that men make is they go and Google pelvic floor contraction and they follow a general Kegel program. In my experience, it is all in the technique. And I'm not saying this to make money off patients, but it's if you do something wrong for a long period of time, you have trained your pelvic floor and your pelvis to do something wrong for a really long time. And if you get it wrong, you can get it very wrong. And what typically happens with Kegel exercises is they tell you to contract around your anus, and we very rarely need to do that unless you have a problem holding in a fart, which a lot of men have, or you have a problem with fecal incontinence. But when it comes to most of the patients that have had surgery for a prostate, or even most of the patients with pelvic pain, the issue is not that far back when it comes to your pelvic floor. It's actually a different part of your pelvic floor. So you're going to be going and training the wrong part of your pelvic floor, thinking that you are solving the situation, where you are actually hitting the wrong spot, and you are actually training for a swimming race by doing hops and skips and jumps. So a little bit goes into doing the right thing from the start. And that's where men's health physios fit perfectly, because we're the ones who will help you, will guide you, and will tell you that you're on the right track, or actually know you're completely doing the wrong thing. And in the long term, it actually saves you a lot of time and effort. So that's the pelvic floor in a nutshell. We all have it. We all need to work it. When it goes wrong, things go wrong. It can be improved. It's never too late to start doing it. If you've had a prostatectomy 10 years ago, you can still make a difference by starting to exercise your pelvic floor today. If you are going to have a prostatectomy in a year or in a month, start now, get it nice and strong. It's never too late to work your pelvic floor, and it's never too late to have a positive impact on your symptoms related to pelvic floor dysfunction.
Thank you, Pierre. Yes, so don't Google and think that you can, from Google, learn how to do your pelvic floor contractions. Even though both men and women have pelvic floors, Kegels were originally designed for women, and men need to exercise a little bit differently. So it's best to seek out a men's health physio to help you do your pelvic floor contractions correctly from the start. Thank you so much for all of your knowledge. It's been great. And I hope we can have you back some other time again for more education.
Thanks so much, Joe. Appreciate it.